Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we are here breaking down UFC 315. We are doing a preview here. It is not the best fight card the UFC has put on. Some of these fights have, I think, potential to be entertaining, but at the same time, those same fights also have the potential to be one of the worst fights you've ever seen. So hopefully we end up on the good side of that coin more often than not this weekend, because we've been on a decent run for fight nights. Kansas City was really entertaining. Last week in Iowa was hit and miss, but the highs were pretty high, and there were some low lows, but overall it wasn't a terrible fight card. So hopefully this pay-per-view doesn't break that trend of at least average to above average cards. And we have Belal Muhammad, Jack Della Maddalena in the main event. And we also have a title fight in the co-main between Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot. So we got a couple title fights at top the bill, and that's where we will start. And then we'll filter down to the last three main card bouts. Then we'll hit some final thoughts at the end of the episode. So we will start right off at the top. Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena. Belal Muhammad attempting to defend his title for the first time. Jack Della Maddalena is one of the better prospects we've seen come up. One of the things we've talked about a lot is some of the changing of the guard at welterweight. Fighters like Jack Della Maddalena, Ian Machado Gary, Sean Brady, Carlos Prates, some of these guys coming up. There's more coming up as well. Morales versus Burns may give us another one here in a couple weeks, but we have more and more prospects looking to climb the rankings. Jack Della Maddalena is kind of the first to break through and fight for the belt. He's taking on Belal Muhammad. Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. What do you make of this main event?
Well, I mean, two guys who haven't lost in God knows how long. Belal, I think, lost in 2019. Meanwhile, Jack Della Maddalena hasn't lost since 2016. 17 fight win streak. His only two losses were his first two professional MMA fights. You mentioned the changing of the guard, and I'm curious to see how he looks. The bright lights will be on him in Montreal. Will he be able to live up to the hype, live up to the pressure that he has been building on? We saw him look really good against Gilbert Burns last March. Gilbert Burns has been aging quite a while now. So there's that. It's also, for me, one of the things to worry about is we know Belal Muhammad got injured, had to pull out of the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight in December. So he hasn't fought since July of last year. Jack Della Maddalena hasn't fought since March of last year. So maybe there will be a little bit of rust, or maybe these guys are just going to show up fresh and ready to go. And I'm curious to see how Belal does in his first defense since winning the belt last year.
Yeah, I think for someone that was undefeated, or hadn't lost in a super long time, and that was kind of being dodged or looked over for the belt, it was good to see Belal win it like that. And so I am also curious to see if he can defend it and what his defense streak might look like after not being denied anymore. And then when it comes to Maddalena, I mean, I think getting a title shot off of Gilbert Burns at this point is kind of crazy for me. He would not be my ideal pick. I know other people are higher on Maddalena than me. Not that he's a bad fighter. He's just I would prefer other people. Like I've liked Ian Gary or Shavkat specifically in this division. So Maddalena's just kind of been on the back burner for like prospects or the guys that were coming up in this division. But I mean, he has a shot, and I know he is a skilled fighter. So that is, at least if there could have been a worse replacement. We'll put it that way, because like that was it Islam. I'm like Moicano, like that was kind of like we kind of were stuck with that. Like, that's tough. We kind of, I think everyone knew how that was going to play out. At least with this replacement, I still think there's a bit of excitement here, because Maddalena was some people think this shot's justified, or if not, he was one fight away. And so this isn't a bad title fight at all by any means. So I think there's still a lot of fun and excitement to be had with this one.
Yeah, I think that when you kind of get over the fact that Shavkat was injured and couldn't fight for the title on this specific date, it does kind of ease this one a little bit. I think the matchup between Jack Della Maddalena and Leon Edwards was a pretty good test for where he was, and could have really established him as a serious title contender if he won, and he still is that. But it does kind of feel like he's getting this title shot with he's skipping a step a little bit, which I don't think is the end of the world when you're dealing with the Shavkat injury. And I wasn't really a fan of Ian Gary getting it off of, I think he is putting himself in a good position, especially at the win over Prates. But before that, I think it would have been a little premature considering he was coming off a loss. Buckley made a decent case, but really the same things you could poke holes in for Jack Della Maddalena, you can for Buckley as well. And he's taking the next step with his Usman fight as well. So he's going to have a shot here in the future. And so I think ultimately this was a fine fight to make. I don't think it's knocking anybody's shoes off, but considering Shavkat's out, I think, this is a good fight. And I think it's an interesting matchup. And one of the things that is intriguing me this far is this originally opened with Belal as a relatively sizable favorite. I'd have to go back to get the exact number he opened at and was sitting at. But right now, Belal Muhammad is minus 188. He virtually was never under minus 200 until relatively recently. I don't remember what he spiked at. I don't know if he got up to minus 250 or not. But right now, minus 188 is as low as he has been since this fight has been available on books. Come back on Jack Della Maddalena is plus 148. So there's at least some people out there that see this one as a competitive fight, and that's what it's lined as. And I think it's interesting because Jack Della Maddalena has a chance to kind of cement himself and prove that he's worthy of being a champion, but there's still questions about his game. And like we said, he skipped a step. Meanwhile, Belal, not a great finisher, going up against a great finisher. And Belal is also 35 or 36, so he's on a little bit of the older end. He did win the belt at 35, so I'm not writing him off for being too old. But I'd rather see fighters younger. Whenever you're backing a fighter, I'd prefer them to be a little bit younger than that 35 or 36 point. So I think there's concerns and positives on both sides just when you're looking at it at a most basic viewpoint.
Yeah, I do. I find it ironic that both of these guys got their first title shot after beating Gilbert Burns. I think that's kind of entertaining, but it's like, we'll see.
I think too, I thought it was funny that there's a little bit like, it feels like there's a little bit revisionist history because I feel like Belal for some reason has like a bunch of supporters now. Like he still gets memed, but it seems less like hateful, and people are like more supportive, and that's why I was thrown off by like how big those lines were getting. Obviously, people in social media isn't exactly Vegas making the lines, but I thought it was kind of reflecting that. Because I've seen some discourse. I do think it could be, a competitive fight that could go multiple ways, but I do see sometimes a lot of people are just saying that like, oh, Belal's just gonna steamroll Maddalena, and it's like, but we've never even said that once before in any other Belal Muhammad fight before that. Like a lot of people were always betting against him and going against him. So I don't know. I just think that's kind of funny how it seems like this stuff's playing out. And so I'm curious to see how it goes throughout the week for fight week and leading up to the fight, how it looks.
Yeah, and one thing I do think is interesting about the Belal Muhammad stuff is I think a lot of people are remembering some of his fights incorrectly. Like, I'll let the cat out of the bag early here. I'm picking Belal, so I'm not trying to bring him down, but I think there is some stuff that I just don't really agree with, even as someone who's thinking he's going to win this fight. Like, I've seen, he dominated Leon Edwards. Well, he lost 2 rounds, and the first round was pretty close, a lot closer than people remember, and he definitely lost 2 rounds, and he was cut open with 30 seconds left in that fight, and Leon was on top and throwing strikes. Like, he very clearly lost 2 rounds of that fight, and I'm not a big fan of, I dominated a guy and I somehow lost 2 rounds. I just don't, that math never really adds up to me, especially if you don't walk away with a 10-8. Like, if you're claiming domination and you lost 2 rounds, you like have to have a 10-8 in there somewhere to have a little bit of an argument. But yeah, he won that fight clearly. I think scored it 3 rounds. Belal. And Burns was hurt when he beat Burns. Like a lot of people forget that Gilbert got hurt in the first round, but and JDM has had some sketchy moments as well. Burns was doing some nice things on the ground against Basil Hafez. Basil Hafez didn't really do much, but JDM was kind of fighting like an idiot and jumping guillotine every chance he got, and he almost lost because of it. Very bizarre performance, and he kind of struggled a little bit to get off his back after he jumped Gilly. So, like, I think there are things that I can look at and with both of these guys and be like, I'm not too sure about how I feel about you fighting in championship fights. The one thing that I will say is that does, in my opinion, favor the guy who's a little bit younger in Jack Della Maddalena, because I think he's the one who's making improvements. I think he has made improvements in his grappling throughout his most recent run of fights, and he has Craig Jones in his corner working on his grappling, and I think that's also beneficial as well.
Yeah, you bring up the grappling. That's just kind of one of the aspects that I'm looking at, and we see it a lot. Stand-up striker in Jack Della Maddalena, guy who has okay striking in Belal Muhammad, but tends to kind of grapple and hold down his opponents once he gets him down there. Exactly what he did to Leon in the 3 rounds that he did win. So it's one of those stylistic matchups. And I know Jack Della Maddalena, as you said, he's been training. It seems like he's training more grappling in preparation for this fight, I'd assume. He does have one submission in the UFC, got it over Randy Brown. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Randy Brown isn't that good on the ground.
Randy Brown was also knocked out before he got submitted.
Oh,
it was kind of like a, he
got finished.
I knock you out, and then you're laying there, and then I jump out of a rear naked choke, and we all call it a submission. But he was knocked out with the punch before he was submitted.
There we go. So if this goes to the ground, I'm gonna put everything I have that Belal takes this fight. If it stays on the feet, we saw what Belal somehow shockingly did to Sean Brady with that knockout. That kind of seemed like it came out of left field, his first finish in a while. And I wonder if he's going to be going for a finish or if he's going to play the typical Belal Muhammad game and just try and wear you down, control the time, control the pace, and control your opponent to get the decision win again.
Yeah, I'm also probably going to lean Muhammad, even though like either these fighters, like I said, I'm not super high on them, or I feel like I could poke a little bit of holes in their record and resume overall. But I think, although I am worried about the age, maybe I'll take the Belal. Just been in thick waters before, has been doing it, has the experience on his side and stuff. And I think the wrestling, he really did put on a clinic against Edwards. So I think if he can get some of the same things going in this one, whether that be distance management to push Maddalena up against the fence. I thought he was doing really well against Edwards. I thought his hands, like you said, Jerry, I mean, he got that knockout, and I thought his hands looked pretty decent against Edwards. So if he can just have some confidence in that, and then obviously work that in with the wrestling, which is why his hands look good when you're constantly making, the opponent think about the takedown and such. So I think I've said this before too. I can't remember talking about. It's never fun betting against or betting on someone and they can't get a finish. So like you're kind of betting on a decision win, which is tough. But I am worried about maybe that one shot lands from JDM where he can flatline Belal. But I think Belal for the most part is decent chin, got some good conditioning. So he's definitely made a skill out of getting these unanimous decisions and split decisions even. But I think I would lean on just the wrestling and the overall experience of for Belal, and I think this could be this is a big step up for JDM. Like James said, he never got that litmus test against Leon Edwards, so I think that could also play a factor. Maybe he might be a little outmatched here on the big step up in competition.
Yeah, and I'm not a guy who routinely picks Belal Muhammad to win fights. I usually pick against him, and I have him in this fight. And the main reasons that I am picking Belal here is because I think he has a pretty good collection of physical tools, whether that be his actual physicality, cardio, chin. I don't think he's going to, at this stage in his career, I don't think he's going to be disappointing anyone. on those realms. It doesn't mean he can't get knocked out, but if he gets knocked out, it's going to be by way of a guy landing knockout shots. He's not going to go out there, get clipped with something, start wobbling around. Like, he doesn't have chin issues. Doesn't mean he's impossible to knock out, but he can take a punch. He's pretty well rounded. I don't think there's an area in Belal's game that he is amazing at and world class at, but I think he's average to above average just about everywhere. There's not a part in his game where I look at and go, circle this, he sucks at this, get him out of it. This is going to be a massive issue. And he's also very smart. And when you combine all three of those things, you can kind of create ways to win a lot of fights, even if you, in theory, shouldn't win. And we've seen him go out there and utilize different striking styles, whether it be a little bit more kick heavy at distance or whether it be a little bit against Leon. It was a lot more pressure, laying the hands. Same with Sean Brady. He's also good at figuring out how he should be attempting takedowns. That's something I'm trying to look at more. One of the things we've talked about this recently with Magomed Ain't Alive against Alex Pereira, I think his choice of takedowns were pretty poor. But one thing about Belal Muhammad is he does a really good job of understanding how to get a guy down based on how he's going to try and defend you. He picked the perfect takedowns to try and get Leon down. So when I look at this fight, I think the only place where Belal would really significantly struggle is pocket boxing exchanges when they're really close and Jack can start mixing in his hooks to the body and to the head. At range, Jack is good. He's got a good jab. He's got a good straight. So I'm not saying he's bad at that range, but he is top tier pocket boxing in the UFC. So I think Belal is smart enough. And he's good enough at managing range to spend a lot of time at distance, spend a lot of time kicking. Maybe he can take out the legs with some leg kicks. He kicks to the body really well, some sneaky head kicks. And then I think in moments where it becomes a pocket boxing exchange, I think he's going to immediately look to clinch. And then from there, he can either go to the clinch striking, which I think he has an advantage in, or try and attempt some takedowns, which, as I alluded to, I think he's pretty good at knowing how to get guys down. And maybe Jack Della Maddalena is able to get up consistently, but I think Belal will get takedowns pretty easy. And I think just that Belal is never going to wear. So if it's him landing body shots, him landing leg kicks, a few jabs, boom, takedown. Now you got to work up. I just think that gets kind of grueling. I wouldn't rule out a Jack Della Maddalena flurry on the inside that knocks out Belal. Because if he hurts him, he's a really good finisher, Jack is. But I think the most likely outcome is Belal fighting a really smart game plan en route to a decision win.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm expecting. But I mean, we saw my thing with Belal is you have to be careful with the takedowns. You can't just lunge in like Gilbert Burns did against Jack Della Maddalena because he knows how to throw those knees, can throw some elbows, and he caught Burns with that, and that's ultimately what got him out of that fight at 299. And that's kind of why I'm like, I just think Jack has that little bit more oomph to him, so maybe there is a chance he gets it. I expect Belal to win, but I'm gonna probably pick Jack Della Maddalena just because of the possibility that he can outstrike him. And like you said, James, the pocket boxing, once you get up close, he's so much more dangerous there than Belal, in my opinion. So we'll see. But I expect it to be either Jack Della Maddalena finish early-ish on in this fight, maybe third round, or Belal to do what Belal does and grind out a decision win.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, too, because is this JDM's first time maybe going 5 rounds or anything?
Yep.
I'd have to check his regional, but it is in the UFC.
No,
in the UFC. Okay.
In his regional, he only went to a third round once, and he lost that fight on his debut.
Okay, so because Jerry, as you were saying, the knockout would be early. That is another thing that could maybe go in Belal's favors. I don't know if JDM's. Well, obviously, like we just said, so he hasn't gone 5 rounds. So I can't remember his exact gas tank in all these fights. I don't know if that would be a big concern how he's going to look for in 5. But especially if it is a takedown heavy fight, though, that can definitely drain. And the other thing I was going to say is on his resume, I don't know if he's ever fought a truly elite wrestler with great takedowns. So there's always a jump there too. If because you can have good takedown defense, and then when it comes to the top guys, it's a whole different level there. So you never know too with that. But I think overall, I mean, like we said, kind of before we started breaking down the fight, though, I do still think this is a pretty fun one, and I think it was a good replacement, and I still think there's entertainment to be had here. So a bit of exciting compared to what's on the rest of the card. So
Yeah, I don't hate this fight as much as I'm not a Belal is fighting. Frankly, I'm usually the opposite end of this deck. I actually don't think this is a terrible fight, and um, the one difference between JDM and Leon is that JDM he's gonna give it his all. Like I like Leon a lot and think he's very talented, but there's a lot of moments where it's like, hey Leon, would you throw a punch? Would you throw a kick, Leon, please? I've never had that concern with Della Maddalena. I've screamed at my TV saying, no, don't shoot another guillotine. Don't jump the gilly again. But I've never gone, Jack, will you please throw some punches? He's gonna throw punches. And I think and this is another thing I think with this Grasso and Silva fight later on. But I think when one fighter is going to go out there and be active, and Jack's going to go be active, Belal's either going to have to fight back or get finished. And I think that's kind of the reality that could make this fight entertaining. Last thing, I'll add two more quick things before we move on. One, Belal is, as far as grapplers that JDM has fought, he's much bigger. Burns is the best grappler that Belal has, or excuse me, Burns is the best grappler that JDM has fought, but Burns, former 155er, not massive for that weight class. Belal, pretty big for the weight class. He'd probably never make 155. So I think that's important. The other big guys that JDM has fought have been rangy strikers and Randy Brown and Kevin Holland. They're big, but not big physical grapplers. Those are two very different things, in my opinion. And then the other thing is, I wonder if JDM is going to use some form of front choke to try and dissuade the grappling attempts. Because, like Jerry mentioned, he's got the knees. I assume he'll be throwing uppercuts as well. Interested to see what that submission offense looks like working with Craig Jones, even if it's, I worked really hard and I can jump a gilly, or I worked really hard and I can try and go for a Dars, even if it's anything to dissuade Belal Muhammad from attempting takedowns. I think that may come in handy if it works for him, if that makes sense. So those are two other small things that I think may play a factor come next week when we're talking about what went down. All right. Co-main event, we have Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot. This is the women's flyweight title fight. And Valentina Shevchenko is looking to kick off her second reign as champion. In her first reign as champion, she defended the title 7 times. Historic title reign. And then that ended with a spinning back kick that Alexa Grasso caught and landed a rear naked choke. They rematch. They fight to a draw. In the trilogy, Valentina Shevchenko wins. She now has the belt. The Grasso trilogy's in the rearview mirror. In that period of time, Manon Fiorot has beat everyone that's been put in front of her. Aaron Blanchfield, Rose Namajunas, as well as others. But Blanchfield and Namajunas are the two highlight wins, in my opinion, on her resume. So she has definitely earned the shot, and I think it would have been a travesty if it went to anybody else based off what she's done during that Valentina and Grasso trilogy. So this is going to be a test for Valentina as to whether she's still at championship level, and Manon Fiorot has to go out there and take out one of the most respected champions, or the most respected champion this weight class has ever seen. So I think we have a potentially interesting co-main event here. Anthony, it's your turn to lead us off. What do you make of Valentina Shevchenko and Manon Fiorot in the co-main event?
I think, obviously you have to have a title fight in a weight class, so this had to be on the pay-per-view. But no, I think it is good. It's fresh to not have after 3 fights with Grasso, which, the way that all played out, it kind of did hold up the division a little bit. But like you mentioned, that just for sure stamped Manon Fiorot as the number 1 deserving title challenger. So I think it's exciting to see if Shevchenko will be able to continue on her legacy. I thought I saw that she was the first, I think, champion or fighter to like fill out the whole belt with all the rubies or whatever. So, I mean, that's something for the UFC. I'm sure is happy about and all that. But I don't know. I am excited to get a new matchup in here, and then I do really think I'm probably going to go Fior in this fight. I thought Blanchfield and her were kind of heads above some of these other fighters, and Fior pretty solidly won that fight. So I think it could be a changing of the guard. I was gonna point at the age and be like, "Oh, Shevchenko's 37." I didn't know Fior was 35, so it's kind of old already. So, but I think I think it could be a fun one too, though, and co-main event, some eyes on it. Maybe get some women's MMA with an entertaining fight. Hopefully, back on the good graces of some of these UFC fans.
Oh yeah. I don't know how I feel about this fight. I'm just so happy the UFC didn't do what they did with the men's flyweight division and have 4 consecutive title fights involving the same 2 people. Because it was the exact same situation with Figueiredo and Moreno that they could have had here. So props to them for actually having someone else. And I go in the defense of that, it's like there wasn't really anyone else in that flyweight division at the time.
I was gonna say too. I think there was a difference in excitement and entertainment levels between Figgy and Moreno in this too. So yeah, thank God.
Oh yeah, I'm more saying like it's the fact that there were no real flyweight contenders for the men's side, and here we at least have someone in Manon Fior who's been working her way up and beating everybody, as you said, as she's had to. And I think she might have the crowd on her side a little bit. They're fighting in Montreal, which is very French Canadian. She is French. Maybe there's a little bit of that respect and support. It is also Valentina Shevchenko, who always has a big following. So I'm curious to see. I know Fior is much bigger, much more physical, and Valentina has just looked so rough in her last few fights. Really since that Talia Santos fight, she has just not looked the same at all.
Yeah, I might be the world's biggest Valentina Shevchenko hater. And it's a mixture of reasons. I'll start with like the actual resume. She is 1-1-1 against Alexa Grasso. In the first fight, she basically chalked it up to, oh, well, that was lucky by Grasso, yada, 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 yada. Well, it was lucky, but also you threw the dumbest spinning kick I've ever seen in my entire life and got submitted. That's your fault. And then when it's a draw in the second fight, Alexa Grasso could have won that fight. In my book, that's very clearly 2-2 with one very close round. Neither of those fighters should be complaining about the fact that it was a draw. They should be thankful they didn't lose, both of them. And Valentina was on her way to winning that fight until she tried to throw a head and arm throw in the 5th round, and Grasso got on top. And then in the third fight, Grasso didn't fight. We had one fighter fighting. We had one fighter attempting takedowns, and we had the other fighter standing there waiting to get taken down and put on her back, and then she'd lay on her back for 4 minutes and 59 seconds if she got taken down to 1 second. And like, I don't know how impressed I can be with a 1-1-1 record over Alexa Grasso. Meanwhile, Alexa Grasso is fighting on this card, and she's a plus 190 underdog against Natalia Silva, who has never fought in a championship fight in her life. And I like Natalia Silva, but it's hard to believe that Grasso is some world beater when they don't think she's going to beat Silva, and I don't think she's going to beat Silva. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And then on top of that, Grasso got to fight for the title with wins over Joanne Calderwood and Viviane Araujo. Big whoop. Meanwhile, if you look at what Valentina Shevchenko did before the Alexa Grasso trilogy, that I'm not really impressed with, she fights to a split decision against Taila Santos. I thought Santos won that fight. A lot of people thought Santos won that fight. And Santos hasn't done shit since. She lost her only UFC fight after that to Erin Blanchfield, got shipped off to the PFL, beat some bums, and lost to the good fighters in the PFL. So she hasn't been doing very well. And then the last time she looked good was against Lauren Murphy in 2021. It's Lauren Murphy, for fuck's sake. I hope she looks good. Like, Lauren Murphy respectfully, not good. And then we're looking at Jessica Andrade, Jennifer Maia, Caitlin Chukagian, Liz Carmouche, Jessica Ai, just the killers of the division. And her best win to start her whole title reign is Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who is a 115-pounder. So, and Joanna's good, but like she's a 115-pounder pretty clearly. So, and meanwhile, Valentina, a girl who fought at 135. So big size difference there. So, and she's now 37, and she now looks physically much slower than when she was beating up on punching bags like Lauren Murphy. And Tyler Santos gassed out and became a punching bag. So I'm not a fan of what we have seen from Shevchenko. I think her run has been kind of fortunate. And every time you listen to her speak, she says the dumbest thing you've ever heard and just can't accept any mistake she's ever made in the octagon. Meanwhile, Manon Fior is talented, way bigger than her. I just kind of think that this is going to be, close at distance. I give Manon Fior an edge at distance because of her size and power. But then I think Manon's going to get this to the clinch and really just brutalize her in the clinch and maybe even finish the fight. So I like Manon Fior a lot this weekend.
Did you say odds? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, betting odds. -150 Manon Fior, +118 Valentina Shevchenko. Was close to a pick 'em at one point, and it has moved to about 150 Manon Fior. So I really like Manon Fior. And I would agree with the point that you made earlier, Anthony, about Fior and Blanchfield. Like those two girls, like I thought the winner of that was the best fighter in this weight class. And not only did Manon Fior win, she won in dominant, impressive fashion. So I really like Manon Fior this weekend and think we are finally going to be over the Valentina Shevchenko title experience at 125 pounds.
Yeah, I would say I'll pick up too with the one of the other reasons I'm going Fior is I think Shevchenko has been able to utilize some wrestling, and like you were saying with the size discrepancy, I just don't know if she's going to be able to have that get out of jail free card to use that wrestling over Fior. Specifically, like you said earlier, one of the other reasons I'm kind of off Shevchenko is I agree. I think she's got noticeably slower. The striking, which at one point was top tier, they show that Jessica Ai knockout before every fight. That was 2019. So that the striking is not the same. And I do, like I said, she has these, she definitely is talented in multiple facets of MMA, but with the striking slowing down, and I don't think she's going to be able to utilize that wrestling. I think she's probably going to get outclassed a little bit, which is crazy to say for someone that has so many defenses and everything. But I was curious, do you think this is if you're just clean, good decision, or you think it could turn into a beatdown? Because I feel like you don't ever really see champions too often get like totally beat down for the span of 5 rounds or whatever. I was trying to think of maybe the last one, but
the last 5-round beatdown was probably Usman and Woodley.
Right. Okay.
Top of my head. I think that it only turns into a beatdown if she's pushing her to the clinch and aggressively striking out of the clinch. Like I think she could push her to the fence, really smoke her with some knees, get her to slow down even a little bit more. And then like we've kind of talked about, I think Valentina is way slower than she was. And a lot of people haven't realized that is because she spent so much time in top position because she's fighting a girl who can't grapple 3 times in a row. So, and Grasso isn't exactly the, poster woman for speed. And she's fighting Natalia Silva this weekend. So good luck. Yeah. So I think it only becomes a beatdown. I think she can land some good shots at range, but I think it really becomes a beatdown. She pushes her to the fence and aggressively looks in the ear and the body and frame off and throw elbows and stuff like that. That's the only way I think it becomes a serious beatdown.
Yeah, I have a feeling that could very well happen. I think Fior's just going to keep walking her down, similarly to what Sean Strickland did with Adesanya, where you just keep going forward and just kind of make Shevchenko feel so uncomfortable in there and just put the pressure on constantly and wear her down and ultimately see what happens.
And I did want to say one last thing, just to go for both sides too. But I would say if Shevchenko can get this win literally would be like the best thing on her record in the past how long too. So this would be a huge win for her because I don't know, you'd have to go back to her early fights maybe, but anything in the last 5 or 6 years though, this would definitely take the cake for that. So
Yeah, I will say if I'm wrong and she comes out here, looks good on the feet and is able to land some takedowns and works her way to a decision, I would be very, very impressed. Like I said, I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but that would be very impressive to me.
Because, I mean, she is the champion. There is still a way that she can win this fight. It just seems to be, as even as the odds say, it's not looking in her favor.
Mm-hmm. Also, her chin has been getting tested a little bit more. A lot of people forget Alexa Grasso hit her with a hook that made her do a backward somersault in the octagon in that second fight. So that is the chin is, I wouldn't say gone because you're fighting at women's
because it's women's MMA. Yeah,
women's.
I don't. That's so funny. You never really get. I just thought of that too. They never really talk about chins in women's MMA, and that must be just because I don't know the finish rate or the knockouts. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but I have some. I'm curious. I'd be interested to see what it looks like if she gets hit with some heavy shots. But we have seen her knocked down recently. I will say that. So, just an interesting note. All right, moving down the card, we have Jose Aldo taking on Aieman Zahabi. Boy, is this a strange fight booking. Jose Aldo, legend of the sport, one of the best fighters to ever step into the octagon, undisputed top 10 pound for pound all time. Some say top 5, some may even say top 1, but I wouldn't really agree with that. But that's a discussion for another day. And he comes back to the UFC, and he's been taking on rising contenders, borderline prospects, Jonathan Martinez, Mario Bautista. He has gone 1-1 in those matchups since his return. Now he takes on Aieman Zahabi, who is a little bit less proven than those previous guys. This is more of a gatekeeper role than I've ever seen Aldo casted in, even in comparison to the last two. Aieman Zahabi also not a prospect that I would expect the UFC to be pushing with the Jose Aldo fight, considering he is not the most entertaining and he is a little bit on the older side for a prospect. So I think this is a curious matchup. Jerry, what do you make of Aldo getting matched up with Aieman Zahabi?
First of all, thank God this isn't in Salt Lake City. Elevation, because we've seen what happened the last 2 times Jose Aldo fought there. There's the loss against Mario Bautista and then the just 15 minutes of being held against a cage by Merab, which hindsight, he avoided 25 takedowns in that fight, stayed on his feet, and just got worn out by the guy who we see as the champion at the moment, who just has an unreal gas tank. I do think it is weird, like you said, that Zahabi is the one to be getting the Aldo fight. There's a couple other guys I think potentially could have gotten that instead of him, maybe a Kyler Phillips, a Montel Jackson, guys who are moving up a little bit more. Or even do like a Henry Cejudo fight, do like a Legends fight in it. I think the only reason is Zahabi is Canadian. I think that's the only reason they probably have him in this fight. I'm gonna lean with a Jose Aldo just out of moral. I can't pick against him. But he is definitely not the same Jose Aldo he once was. And this gatekeeper role, as he said, is kind of a weird one for him. But he looked good in that Batista fight. It was a split decision, so it wasn't like he was dominated in it. I think it was pretty clear 2-1, but it's one of those ones that, like, if he comes out and looks anything remotely like a shade of his former self, he'll get this fight done. If not, Zahabi might use the hometown crowd to his advantage and have that in backing him up.
Yeah, I don't like this at all. I think they continue to mismanage Aldo at the end of his career and book the weirdest and worst fights. I am actually not super familiar with Zahabi, though, but I saw 2 of his wins. One was against Tercios, who I can't remember the last time he's won. And then, he beat an old Pedro Munoz, so I'd maybe have to look at that fight. But Like you said, Jerry. I mean, I'm not gonna pick against Aldo, so we already know my pick, and I just hope. I don't think he's looked. I will say, I don't think Aldo's looked like overtly bad or anything. He might not be at like his best or the top level like he once was, even just a couple years ago. Obviously, not even prime, but I still think he's really competitive in all these fights, and he's just been getting really tough matchups. So if Zahabi is even a step down from some of the other prospects, um, I think this could, hopefully turn into a fun little Aldo clinic that I know we've been hoping for, but he keeps getting matched up in these crazy fights. So, um, but and then if not, I will be interested at least to see Zahabi for like my first time kind of focusing and keying in on him in this one to see what he has. But uh, it's good to see Aldo fight, but terrible matchup. Thank you, UFC.
Yeah, this is a really weird one, and to be honest, I don't really have a firm prediction. Um, this I've watched tape on 3 of the main card fights. Haven't watched any tape on Aldo and Zahabi, and I would like to do that because I'm also not the most familiar of Aieman Zahabi. I have a baseline knowledge of his skills. He's got good range management, not bad boxing. Um, he's good at sticking guys when they close the distance, and he hits hard enough to dissuade fighters from pressuring. Um, he's a solid striker. Nothing extraordinary. The most notable thing about him is that he's the brother of Firas Zahabi, who head coach at TriStar MMA, head coach of George St. Pierre, a lot of other fighters, and he's a great mind for the sport. Um, and I imagine Zahabi is also. I guess I don't really know how much is Zahabi doing this stuff, how much is Firas coming up with good game plans. Like, where's that line? Like, where's that coming from? Is it both? Like, I really don't know, and it's just kind of hard to tell because of who they are. Like, it's probably a mixture of both. They're probably both intelligent. Because you can't just be have a head of nails and go out there and fight to a smart game plan, or else everybody would do it. We got a lot of dumb idiots in the sport, and we can't really follow a game plan. So I imagine Zahabi has some form of intelligence up there in that noggin when it comes to the fight game, and that has helped him in fights. He usually fights with a pretty good game plan, and that kind of makes me interested as to going against Aldo. There's so much tape on Aldo. Um, they'll probably try to implore the cage push a little bit, I imagine. Um, and you know, Aldo also doesn't have great cardio. So do they attack the body? Do they make Aldo fight early to try and gas him out while also trying to stay safe? I just think there's some routes where you could kind of exploit a guy who doesn't have the best cardio, or at least his cardio has dipped, and he also can be held up against the fence. So it's just a very weird fight. And one of the things that I don't like about Aldo at this stage of his career is that he's kind of everyone he fights kind of has this eject button on him where if the striking exchanges aren't going well, and the one thing you can't do is let Aldo get in a flow state. You can kind of just push him up against the fence and immediately break any flow he gets into or any rhythm he gets into in the striking, which I think is not good. And I do think the Martinez fight he won is an outstanding matchup for him to go out there and look good. And I think he looked really, really good in that matchup. And I still think Aldo can win, and he might even win this fight. But so I don't want to make it seem like I'm completely out on Aldo. I just think that there are, pretty clear paths for guys to take advantage. That doesn't mean that he doesn't kick this guy's leg off and hit him with some really hard shots on the inside and go to the body and land his combinations. I don't think that's impossible, but I don't have a firm pick, but I'm just not I'm kind of got to see on some tape on Zahabi and see what exactly he looks like in some of these boxing exchanges to a little bit of a deeper extent, because like I said, I'm not as familiar with his game, and I think that I'm very familiar with a lot of guys' game. Not to brag, but in order for us to get a guy in here fighting Jose Aldo, who I'm like, I don't really know very much about what he does. Not great. So I think that's kind of an indication of the matchup. And maybe Zahabi looks good, but I do think it's a weird matchup. And I think the only reason this is happening is because he's Canadian and this is Canada. But couldn't we have found Jose Aldo a more interesting fighter in their hometown? Like, I still don't get that aspect of it either. So a lot of confusion from the fight itself all the way to the matchup. And I will say, by the time the preview comes out, I'll have a little bit more determination in my pick. But right now, I really don't have anything strong.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's also the only. I could be wrong, but I think he's the only fighter from Montreal or who fights out of Montreal on this card. So it's like, oh, we have to give you somebody, I guess. So here's this guy to fight Jose Aldo. What are the betting odds?
That's
Is
what I
this
was gonna say. I was
Aldo a
curious.
pretty big favorite?
Aldo is a decent sized favorite. He is a minus 220. Aieman Zahabi plus 168. So biggest favorite we've talked about so far.
Come on, Aldo. Let's see if you can live up to the hype again. And I wonder if it is just a bunch of people who are like, we're just going to bet on Jose Aldo or what? So,
I don't think Zahabi has shown much to really
that's
draw
fair.
in money. I will say he has been a sizable underdog in some of these matchups. He was north of plus 300 against Basharat when he won. I believe he might have been an underdog against Tercios. I believe he was an underdog against Moonhouse. I just go double check some of that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know he has been an underdog in quite a few fights that he has won. So this is not a guy who is, walking out there to his death just because the odds makers don't think he can win. So, moving on down the card, we have Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. Grasso, we've talked about a little bit just as a result of her having that trilogy with Valentina Shevchenko. This is also her first fight since that trilogy took place. She is fighting Natalia Silva. Silva undefeated in the UFC, rising up. She's taking, in my opinion, understandable steps up in competition every time she fights. And this is kind of her fight to where if you go out there and beat Alexa Grasso, you've cemented yourself as a title challenger. The one kind of wrench in that is that you do have Weili Zhang, who may get a double champ fight, but I don't think that is the end of the world because a win over Grasso puts you in a great position regardless. So very big fight for Natalia Silva, and for Alexa Grasso, her third fight against Valentina Shevchenko was quite the disappointment, and she's probably looking to bounce back from that. So this is an important fight for both fighters' careers. I'll start us off with the betting odds now, so I don't forget. We have Natalia Silva minus 250, Alexa Grasso plus 190. So that is the widest line we've talked about so far. We'll talk about another one here in a second that's quite wide, but as for right now, Natalia Silva is the biggest favorite thus far. Anthony, I believe it is your turn to lead us off. What do you make of Natalia Silva going up against Alexa Grasso?
I think I'll start off earlier. Same thing with how it was for Shevchenko. I think it is nice to now see that the trilogy is closed. Just see Grasso move on and fight someone else and finally get a different look, different matchup, a little bit of spicing up the division. And like you said, pretty not the best performance last time, so I'm sure a lot of fans are maybe a bit off and not as excited for her. But she was actually one of the more entertaining fighters in this division before that Shevchenko trilogy started. So, I think there is some momentum here for that at least. And then with Silva, I trying to see who she fought maybe right before the Andrade, but I think I'd watched a little bit of that. But Andrade was one of my first. That fight was when I was like focusing in, really getting a first look at Silva, and I thought she looked really good. I thought she actually made Andrade look pretty bad for the first time that I'd seen in a couple of Andrade's earlier fights. I thought she was on a decent little run there, so that is saying something. And I think it's a good. Obviously, you got to have a fight when there's the belt fight is the co-main, so got to have someone else in division on the card is usually what they do, and I think this is should be a pretty good one at least compared to some other fighters in this division. So
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Better than some of the other options we have for an Alexa Grasso fight. My biggest question is she actually going to show up and fight this time? You talked about it earlier, James, in that third fight against Shevchenko. It didn't look like there was anyone fighting back against Shevchenko. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something went wrong behind the scenes, whatever it was. Hopefully she at least shows up and fights. I don't expect it to be enough because Natalia Silva has just been mowing people down recently. Her last loss was 2017. She's been on like a 14 fight win streak, 12 fight win streak, and looked damn good in her last 3 against Andrade, Viviana Arajo, and Andrea Lee. I don't expect much from Grasso, but maybe her boxing can come in handy here. But another one, Valentina Shevchenko showed the way to beat Grasso, take her to the ground and control her. That's something that Natalia Silva is very good at doing. She has 7 submissions. She has has not had a submission since being in the UFC, but did so many on the regional scene that it's something that if Grasso starts wearing a bit, she can use her takedown ability to kind of control and end this fight in a way.
Yeah, the case of Natalia Silva is a really interesting one because when you look at the overall record, 18 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw, solid, but doesn't jump off the page. But when you really open up and look under the hood, a lot of her losses came in between 2015 and 2016. She's 28 years old right now. That she was 18, 19, 20 when a lot of her professional losses happened. Latest loss, like you said, Jerry, 2017. That was to Marina Rodriguez, who went on to have a good UFC career. And she was still relatively young, I believe 21 or 22 when that loss happened. She didn't lose again on the regional scene. Then she takes 3 years off before her UFC debut, makes her debut against Jasmine Judavicius, who, in hindsight, you'd think big grappler, that's a tougher matchup for her. She dominated that fight, and that might be her best showing in the UFC. And she's done a lot of positive things. And I am a big fan of her game. And the thing that I really like about Natalia Silva's game is that just when you look at what she can do in the striking realm, she can throw kicks with both legs. She can throw kicks with both legs to all 3 levels. She can throw kicks, teeps, side kicks, hook kicks. She can throw spinning kicks. So her kicks are, she can throw just about every kick that you can name, and she's willing to throw it. Her hands, she's got quick hands. I wouldn't consider her an elite boxer, but she's quick and accurate with her hands. She will throw counters, and she's willing to mix. That aforementioned set of kicks she has, she mixes those with her hands. She'll throw kicks from boxing range, string kicks, and punches together. She didn't do it against Andrade, but one thing that she did consistently against some other girls is she'd throw a kick, and all these girls think I need to crowd her kicks, so they come forward and then they try and throw right off her kick, and she takes a step back and blasts them with a counter punch. She's very tricky with her actual shot selection, so she throws so many different strikes and mixes them into so many different combinations, makes it very hard to get a read on her. I think her fight against Andrade is probably the most boxing heavy approach, and it's just because Andrade was in her face the whole time throwing hands. And in theory, that is a great game plan against Natalia Silva, who's an elite kicker, very quick and great movement, but Silva still won that fight. So I don't think she's an elite grappler, but she's fighting Alexa Grasso, and Grasso has some opportunistic submission skills. Sorry, I took a little bit to get that one out. But she's got some submission skills, but her overall grappling game is pretty poor. Like Alexa Grasso is not going to go out there land takedowns and spend 15 minutes in top position. She's not going to work 2 submissions, but if you hand Alexa Grasso your neck on a silver platter, she'll take it and try and choke you out. So, Natalia Silva's a fighter I really like, and I think this is going to be a good matchup for her because of the tools that she has and because of her speed. I think she's going to be much faster than Grasso, and Grasso doesn't move very much. The amount of times that Shevchenko and Grasso were just standing right in front of each other and just waiting for the other person to throw, Silva's going to force her to move, walk her into shots, and the big octagon, something we haven't always seen from Silva because she's taken a couple fights in the Apex. I think the big octagon really plays into her movement, kicking, range management type style. So I think Natalia Silva is very, 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 very good, and think she's gonna look great here against Grasso. Grasso, I think, is going to be limited to maybe landing some hands, maybe can hurt Silva. So I think her actual upside is much more close the distance, land the knockout. But I still think Silva is the fighter who gets it done.
Yeah. I'm backing you guys with Silva. I just think Grasso has shown too many holes, and Silva's too good at the moment and on the rise. Do you think she gets a title shot next, say she does win this, or do you think she has to fight a Blanchfield or someone else? Saying that Weili doesn't get the double champ fight.
She doesn't?
Yeah, say they don't do the Weili fight because, say, Fiorot wins, I think part of that desire goes away because it's, the Shevchenko and Weili fight, so.
I don't know. They do have that Barber Blanchfield fight. I was trying to look at what was so I guess that is because I was thinking like I wouldn't mind that, and I was looking at the rankings, but that Barber Blanchfield, them both being higher on or closer to the #1 spot, that's probably the title challenger or the title eliminator right there. But you never know if depending on how this plays out too. If Silva looks really good, I'm sure some people wouldn't mind if she's fighting for the belt. So,
yeah, I think if she looks good, she'll get it. And I think that Barber's the one who could steal it if she looks really good against Blanchfield. I don't think they'd be running to the window to do a Blanchfield versus Manon Fiorot fight.
that is true.
A rematch, that is. I think if Shevchenko wins, and maybe there's a thought of that. So I would say Silva looks good and wins. I'd say I would probably say yes, she gets it. But I do think there's an interesting discussion to be had about double champs and Blanchfield and Barber, because in my opinion, Manon Fiorot, Aaron Blanchfield, Macy Barber, and Natalia Silva are the best 4 fighters in this weight class. So if Barber or Blanchfield's getting a shot, I wouldn't throw a fit over that.
That's actually a pretty good 4 too. I actually think they're all those 4 are pretty talented and good fighters. So that is we can if we could just kind of round robin those 4 consistently against each other, I'd be there for it.
Especially when you look at the 4 in the other 2 women's divisions from 2 to 5. Does not look quite as appealing.
No, it does not.
Yeah. Jessica Andrade, who's lost to half of these girls at flyweight. I don't even want to look at the bantamweight one because I know that's ugly. I know that's not good. I know that's bad.
Don't forget the next pay-per-view we have has a Juliana Pena fight on it.
Yeah. I might not watch. I might break a streak of watching pay-per-views, and I might, maybe I'll just turn it off during the Pena fight. I'll have to figure it out. But the last thing I want to do is watch her fight.
Yeah. Hopefully Karen just does her quickly, and
we can have Pena and Harrison. They can go fight, at they can fight at the Apex, and we don't even need cameras. Someone just put an official in there and let 3 judges and let us know who wins. All right. Last fight of the main card. Can't imagine anybody is going to have anything too in-depth to say here or anything. I assume no hot takes. Benoit Saint-Denis was originally supposed to fight Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez has been forced to pull out. They find a Canadian named Kyle Prepolic to step in and take this fight. Prepolic, he is 0-2 in the UFC. Lost to Austin Hubbard and another fellow who is no longer in the UFC. Not great. He has then gone 4-1 since leaving the UFC. He's 35 years old. He's getting the shot here largely because he's from Canada, I believe. They probably found the top-ranked Canadian lightweight on the regional scene and gave him the fight. So that's what we have for Benoit Saint-Denis, who's looking to bounce back from a pair of losses to Renato Moicano and Dustin Poirier. Both finished losses, but personally, I'm not really too low on Benoit Saint-Denis quite yet. I'm not as high as I once was, but those two losses are not going to get me to pick a guy named Kyle Prepolic over him, man. Betting odds, I don't even know if they have the odds up on this fight yet. I'm sure there are some books that do. Oh, here it is. Benoit Saint-Denis minus 1,100. Kyle Prepolic plus 600. Saint-Denis will probably maul him in grappling and finish him. But do you guys have anything to add on this matchup?
No, not really. Benoit Saint-Denis. I just want to see how he bounces back. And I think this is, if he had lost any confidence, this is a good one for him to get at least some confidence back.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. I was really looking forward to that Joel Alvarez fight. I know you said you're not as high on him. I think I'm probably maybe a little low on BSD. I don't know if I really. So kind of like Jerry said, this would just be a good one to get right back in the win column and hopefully an electrifying finish and get some fans back on the train a little bit, because I'm kind of off after those last two performances, because when he was on that original streak, he was maybe going to get that title shot if he beat Dustin Poirier, which I didn't agree with, but and now we're here. So at least maybe we'll theoretically we should be starting off the card with a finish, so that's always nice.
If we're not, Benoit Saint-Denis either had the biggest fumble of all time, or Kyle Prepolic is made of iron. He's iron Kyle Prepolic. Now that Chandler's watched, we need a new iron.
I was gonna say
Iron Michael is more like
Iron Mike Malone.
Yeah. All right, let's hit some prelims. This is not the greatest slate of pay-per-view prelims I have ever seen, but I wouldn't call it atrocious. The fact that I said that with a little bit of a question mark does probably raises some concern for some people, but I probably have seen worse. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to go look around and do a little bit of research, which also not a good sign. And as I blabber, I'm kind of talking myself out of liking these prelims. Jerry, I believe it's your turn to go first. Do you have any prelims that you're looking at for UFC 315?
One that I just think could be violent and end with a finish is the final prelim, Mike Malott and Charles Radke. Radke in his last three fights has been a first-round knockout. He gets knocked out versus Carlos Prates in the first round, and then he knocks out Schmelzberger in the first round. Mike Malott has had one decision since coming to the UFC. That was his last time out against Trevin Giles after he lost to Neil Magny by knockout. So I don't expect this one to go the distance. I think it'll just be a good one heading into the main card. And as you said, BSD should be getting a finish. So we could have two in a row to get us into some title fights.
Yeah, the two I'll pick, since I do like Mike Malone. I'm curious to see how he bounces back, because I believe, was that last one he lost? That was in Canada as well, right?
Yeah, he lost to Neil Magny in Toronto, and then he beat Trevin Giles last time out in Edmonton.
Okay. So I think he already got back in the win column. But the first fight I'll pick is Ian Kuntalaba's fighting. Bit of a character, does a bunch of stuff. But I was actually pleasantly surprised how smart he fought in his last fight. So I actually wanted to see if he's going to progress and evolve and from the meathead to like an actual maybe intelligent fighter, or did he just luck into doing something smart last fight? I don't know much about Modestas Bukauskas, but we'll see. That's just something I'm going to keep my eye on. And then the other fight, which is kind of buried, looking at these other ones on the prelims, the early prelims, is Marc-Andre Barriault versus Bruno Silva. Those are two fine middleweights. They've done some entertaining things, had some good fights here or there. So I'm like, I wouldn't say like I like or like super, huge fans of these guys, but whenever they're on, I'll watch them. So two people that I think are able to produce fun fights. So that could be a little sneaky one on our early prelims.
Yeah, I agree with the ones you shouted out, and those are probably the best left on the card. Jasmine Judavicius taking on Jessica Andrade is fairly important for the women's flyweight division, and Jasmine has consistently looked solid. I wouldn't consider her a world beater by any means. She's lost a couple fights, Natalia Silva, Tracy Cortez as well. Andrade probably going to bring it. She usually brings it, or if she's not bringing it, she kind of just, hey, finish me so I can go home. It's kind of her mindset. So, but in that Silva fight, she was very aggressive, didn't lay down at all. So we've kind of seen a mixed bag there from Andrade. Interested to see what we get from her. If she brings it, interested to see how Jasmine responds as a heavy grappler. Interested to see how she lands those takedowns if she does. And if Jessica wants the door and wants to go home early, Jasmine's the type of grappler who's going to land the takedowns, and she's going to give you ground and pound and submission attempts and try and get a girl out of there. So that's kind of an interesting one. And I think they surprisingly managed to get like 3 pretty decent women's flyweight fights. Like if you were telling me we got 3 ranked women's flyweight fights on the card, wouldn't think they were this good of women's flyweight fights. I think there's a level of intrigue with all of these girls as potential title challengers, and we have a championship fight. So, and then Navajo Sterling, Ivan Erslan, Navajo Sterling, training partner of Israel Adesanya. Everyone saw him knock a bum out on Contender Series, said he was the next best thing. And he kind of looked like crap in his UFC debut. So we'll see if he continues to look like crap or looks like the next best thing. So I'd prefer him look good because it's the light heavyweight division and we need fighters who look good. So go out there and perform, Navajo. And then I guess I'll hit the last 2 because it is a relatively small card. Jing Yong Lee lost his UFC debut. He literally just threw down with Hyder Emil until someone fell. He fell. Daniel Santos loves to pull out of fights. He's going up in this one. Probably a fun fight based on both guys' fight, but Santos pulls out so often. I wouldn't count that it actually takes place until you see him in the octagon. Just pretend this fight isn't happening.
And it's ironic because he's the one who actually is the filler in for this fight.
Yeah, it is very ironic. They gave him less time to pull out, I think, was the thought process. If we make you fight on short notice, up a weight class, how are you going to pull out? You're just mathematically giving him less time. So maybe it works out. We'll see. And then Bexat Almacan and Brad Katona. Brad Katona, 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner, made his way back as the veterans part of that Conor and Chandler series. Decent UFC fighter, nothing to write home about. Bexat Almacan is the guy who made a short notice debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, hurt Umar, but was largely dominated in the grappling phases. And Katona is a fairly respectable matchup, so I'm interested to see if we have something in this Bexat Almacan based on his performance against Umar, even if it was just a moment or 2. Brad Katona is a much more reasonable matchup for his second UFC fight. Interested to see how he looks. So that is every fight from UFC 315. All 5 main card bouts. Well, 4 of the main card bouts in detail, and then Benoit Saint-Denis and Kyle Prepolic. So skimmed a little bit there, but then we hit every prelim. So, and preview will be out this week. Best bet will be out as well later in the week, probably Friday, maybe Thursday for the best bets. We'll have to see, but definitely both will be out this week for sure. And make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure to come back next week as we break down these fights, and cross your fingers we have an International Fight Week fight announcement to talk about. That would be very nice considering every week it's getting closer. And 3 weeks ago, we thought we were going to have the announcement next week, and it's still no announcement. So hopefully that comes down the barrel soon. But for now, we have UFC 315. That's what we'll be back with next week. But thank you for tuning in this week, and we appreciate your support.